And Raghuram Rajan joins me now from Chicago to discuss this and more. Professor Rajan, so you talk about the three pillars and suggest the third pillar of civil society, of communities, has been weakened. What's your top remedy for that?
Well, I think we need to push power back to the community. Over time, as markets have strengthened, government has also expanded, but it's pulled power away from the community to the national level and from the national level to the international level so as to govern international markets. I think what we see with the weakening community is partly the community itself needs to be strengthened through direct measures, but also more empowerment of the community will give a greater sense of engagement and allow people to work towards the better health of the community. That means pushing power from the international to the national, national to regional, regional to the community level.
Professor Rajan, I want to talk about India. What are the lessons in the book for India?
Well, India is a flourishing democracy. That's to its strength. It has the preconditions for becoming a liberal market society. It has two problems. One, it has a relatively weak government in the sense of capabilities. India needs to do far more in becoming a middle-income country, such as building out infrastructure, and that requires stronger government. It also has a relatively weak private sector, which is often dependent on the government for favors. So India always has the possibility of turning more authoritarian. Coming to the elections, I think the elections that face India are really about making choices in these directions. Do we want a stronger economy, a more liberal economy, which can also in some ways make India much more of a flourishing democracy, or do we want a more authoritarian structure?
And how do you think it will play out in the ballot box, just looking at the conversation nationally going on there over the last few months?
Well, I think the conversation was about the economics of Indian growth. The lack of jobs, for example, was a big issue till a few weeks back. Since then, there's been a cross-border skirmish with Pakistan, and issues of national security have also come on the plate. And my sense is, as we go into the elections, all these issues, jobs, national security, but also how much respect government has for the various institutions we have, such as the Reserve Bank, the Central Bureau of Investigation, all these issues will be debated, and the attitude of the government in power, as well as the attitude of the opposition, will become big factors in how the voting goes.
Well, once the election is over and once the new politicians are in power, what do they really need to do? What do you think they need to do and that they can do?
Well, I think India, like many other countries, including the countries of the industrial West, need to really think about the distribution of power within the country. In the West, we see a great dissatisfaction with power having migrated outside the country into the international arena. But even within country, as for example in the UK, there's a lot of concern in the north of England that too much power is there in London. I think Germany is different because right from World War II, there's been more decentralization, but you hear some murmurs even in Germany. I think you have a similar issue in India, that there is a sense that the states want more freedom from the center, more freedom to determine policy. And within the states, the localities, the municipalities, the villages, they want, in a sense, more autonomy, but also more funding. They want more of the tax revenues to devolve down to them so that people have more of a sense of participation in democracy. To my mind, this is the biggest issue facing the world going forward. How much do we allow people a sense that they have command over their futures in the face of tremendous technological change that they have to essentially adapt to?
This is, as you talk about, a global phenomenon. And I want to take a further step back away from India now and ask, is the problem capitalism or more the kind of capitalism the world has adopted in recent decades?
It's not so much the kind of capitalism or even capitalism itself. It's the fact that capitalism every so often has to adapt to serious technological change. In our case now, it's the advent of artificial intelligence, the ability to communicate tremendous distances, which allows us to create global supply chains, all of which have an impact on the kind of jobs that are being created, but also on the sustainability of existing jobs. Adaptation requires both the markets to change, but importantly, the government as well as the community to change. For example, in the United States, you need a lot more people with strong high school education, but also perhaps education at the level of the community college. Now, the education system is not working. It's failing people at an early level so that by the time they graduate from high school, they simply do not have the skills that would be required of somebody who ordinarily graduates. So this is really the problem. We need to adapt to technological change. It's not so much the system which has to change.
Raghuram Rajan, thank you. His latest book is The Third Pillar: How Markets and the State Leave the Community Behind.